I am Joan Yates, and I am very pleased to welcome you on behalf of the Water Center. Glad you could all be with us. As I say, this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whatever it happens to be for you. We're so excited you could be with us for this hour for us to explore the topic, developing the leaders our systems deserve. As I say, I am Joan Yates. I have other members of the Water Center team joining me today. I just thank Tracy for starting the recording. So Tracy is here. Hi, Tracy. And Danelle Hogan, folks with the blue backgrounds, and Mary Quinnen is also here. So those are our Water Center folks who are with us today. And we are so happy to have as our guest facilitator today, Lihi Rosenthal, who is by extension one of our Water Center team. Lihi is one of our advanced facilitators with the Water Center. She was in our cohort 2 group, and when not a Water Center advanced facilitator in her bigger life, Lihi is the director of the Leaders for Equity and Democracy, the LEAD program, and the coordinator for the Leadership Coaching Initiative and Professional Learning at the University of California, Berkeley School of Education in California, for those of you who are not familiar where UC Berkeley is located. And I'm going to, without further ado, turn it over to Dr. Rosenthal, to Lihi, as we refer to her. So Lihi, take it away. Thank you so much for being here today and facilitating this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joan. And hi, everyone. Good morning. Happy Pride Month. Great to see you all. Hopefully it's actually spring in some of the places you are. It is freezing in Berkeley this morning, which is why I'm wearing a sweater. But you know, that's what systems do to us. Let's get started. Here today, we're going to start with, if I can get that to load. There it is. We're going to start with a quick Padlet introduction activity, a do now, so to speak, which will also allow folks who are joining us a little bit late to come in and get settled. In the chat in a moment, you'll see a link to a Padlet. You can also access it through this website or through this QR code. And I invite you to go onto the Padlet and offer your contributions to the following questions. If you had 3 years to develop systems thinking skills in aspiring leaders, what would you prioritize? You'll see on the Padlet that there's a space for you to offer original thoughts or to just riff off of the ideas of others, contribute, enter into dialogue, etc. And of course, as we know, technology has a mind of its own. So if you're not able to access Padlet, no problem. Feel free to put your ideas in the chat. I'll play a song, and when the song ends, we'll pick it up and get started for today. As a bonus, feel free to consider what habits of a systems thinker you can pick up on in this song. Enjoy. Okay, thank you all so much. There are so many great ideas here, and we will be returning to these and building on them. Feel free to put additional connections that come up as we talk. You know, I asked you this question because I have had the great privilege of doing exactly this. I run a doctoral program that is 3 years long for practicing leaders who are aspiring to be senior-most leaders in pre-K through university educational systems. And so I have spent a lot of time asking myself what I would do, what I should do to develop their systems thinking. And so I hope today to share a little bit of that journey with you, and more importantly, to build some connections around what it is that we can collectively do, what it is that you're doing in your context, and how the two inform each other. So with that in mind, oh, there it is. This is who I am. Joan already gave me a wonderful introduction. I've been doing systems thinking for as long as I can remember, and it's also at the center of a book that I co-authored, and this idea that It's only by centering the needs of those students who will be most easily disenfranchised by the current systems that we can be promoted to create systems that truly work for all. That is really the guiding light of the way that I approach education. That approach these days mostly takes the shape of helping to develop doctoral students. These are the 12 students in the first cohort of the Leaders for Equity and Democracy, or LEAD, EDD program here at UC Berkeley, and you're going to get introduced to them in a variety of different ways over the next 50 minutes or so. To give you a quick idea of the program, LEAD is a rigorous 3-year program. We bring people in who have already become leaders, have already practiced for a while. The average years of experience is around 20 years of experience. And nonetheless, they feel like they would like to take on an additional rigorous learning opportunity as they prepare for these senior-most roles. They take many of their classes within their small cohort, but because we know that there are different paths to educational leaderships and different interests that our leaders have, they also have the option to design their own elective courses, as well as participate in a variety of field visits. And really, our goal is to prepare them to lead in the senior-most roles in organizations. It is a heavy charge, one that I take very, very seriously. And so they know that this is not a easy way to earn your degree. We're really going to put them through the press because we have 3 years to do as best as we can by them. And goodness, do our systems deserve leaders who are as well prepared as they are, because the challenges are just that large. We have a variety of big ideas. Here are the 6 big ideas of LEAD. And I invite you in the chat to consider these 6 big ideas. We're going to go through them one by one through the rest of the session. But what are some connections that you can begin to make between these big ideas and the habits of a systems thinker? Where do you see connections between these and the habits? Joan will put in the chat a copy of the Water Center Habits card. There's an amazing one-pager that I use all the time for those of you who haven't seen it yet, if that's helpful. Or you don't have to use the Water Center language. We just want to know what connections you make. And I see them starting to come. Big picture, absolutely. Changing perspectives, making connections, considering mental models. Considering an issue fully, resisting the urge to come to a quick conclusion. Excellent. Successive approximation as a connection to embodied practice. Beautiful. Participatory leadership, surfacing and testing assumptions. Wonderful. Structure generates behavior. We design for equity or we perpetuate inequity. Thank you. Great. Well, let's take a look at these in a little bit more detail as we apply them in our program. And again, invite you to make connections throughout with your own context. The first thing I want to tell you is that we really infuse systems thinking throughout our journey. We first introduce it during the application phase when our finalists come on to their 2-day interview. That morning, we give them a case study to review and discuss as a group. I think that this year's case study was something along the lines of, tell me if this is familiar, you are the district leadership team and you've just learned that there is something wrong with one of the buildings in the district and that school needs to close down and you have to make some decisions about what happens to the 600 elementary students who call that school their second home. Are you going to merge them with another school? Are you going to, give them opportunity tickets to choose any other school in the district? What are you going to do? We assess how they approach that case study, both in terms of their individual assessment of the situation and also how they negotiate space with the group. Someone in the Padlet made mention to distributed leadership, and that is definitely something that we're looking for. We don't need any more heroes. We need folks who are really committed to changing systems, and that means that they understand the power of the collective. And then that afternoon, after we put them through a couple of other challenges, we give them a copy of the system archetypes, and we have them recast the same case study again through the systems archetypes. And so again, from the very beginning, they're exposed to these ideas at a really deep level. Now, we do that with two goals in mind. It's not that we're expecting them to already understand the archetypes. We're not assessing their understanding of systems thinking. Instead, we have two goals in mind. First, we want to be incredibly transparent about the focus of this program. We are going to be spending a lot of time together with these folks, and they are going to invest a lot in this education. They are going to invest their personal time, their financial resources, opportunities to be in community and with their families. We want to make sure it's a fit. And so from that very first day, we are very clear about who we are. And we also want to understand, how will they approach a cognitively difficult task? What will they do when they're given a new mental model, something that is not necessarily within their realm of expertise? They're coming in expecting to tell us about all of the things they've already done as successful leaders, and we are asking them to challenge themselves to look at leadership in a different way. So from the very beginning, and we'll end today by showing you how systems thinking shows up in their ultimate summative assessment, which is their doctoral dissertation. But in between, I mentioned those big ideas, and I want to get back to those. We introduced the systems thinking by being very intentional about naming the roots of systems thinking in the work. They will obviously read, all of the great scholars of systems thinking. I'm sure you can recognize at least 3 copies of the 5th discipline on my bookshelf back there, because I think I have all the versions at this point. But we want to make sure that they understand that epistemologically, systems thinking actually is an ancient practice, and it's an ancient practice that has its roots in many cultures and organizations. And so from the very beginning, we expose them to some primary sources that they might not be expecting to get at a doctoral program at UC Berkeley, but we do want them to see that the concepts here have a genealogy that's much longer than the genealogy that gets credit oftentimes in the academy. One of the first things we have them do is a Socratic seminar with the chapter Sky Woman Falling, which is chapter 1 of Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass. Again, not often what you would think of as a scholarly text, but nonetheless, one that we take them through. And so I would love it if someone could come off mute for us and would just be willing to read this quote from Robin Wall Kimmerer.
Okay, I'll do it. Oh, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Okay, to lead the system, you must see the system. On one side of the world were people whose relationship with the living world was shaped by Sky Woman, who created a garden for the well-being of all. On the other side was another woman with a garden and a tree. But for tasting its fruit, she was banished from the garden and the gates clanged shut behind her. That mother of men was made to wander in the wilderness and earn her bread by the sweat of her brow, not by filling her mouth with the sweet, juicy fruits that bend the branches low. In order to eat, she was instructed to subdue the wilderness into which she was cast.
Thank you so much. So we have a question for you. We'll put it in the chat for you. And we also invite someone to come off of mute and answer in real time here with us. But how does this excerpt connect to systems thinking generally and to the idea of becoming leaders for equity and democracy?
I would say it reminds us that our perspectives are one perspective. And if we, what are the alternatives to the ways that we see the world? And there may be other choices. And that is part of, taking different perspectives and systems thinking at its core. And what are our mental models that we hold that shape it?
Thank you.
What comes to my mind as I look at this metaphorically is the challenges that underserved populations deal with on a regular basis, are put in some very challenging situations for which they've had no control over, but the society has not been yielding to benefit them, and they had to forge themselves along the pathway of achieving whatever it is that they needed to achieve, with all the many obstacles that they will have to encounter.
Thank you.
I was thinking a little bit about two of the archetypes, like success for the successful, those that get to be on the one fine side of the space, continue to benefit from that, and the others have to work harder. And then the idea of unintended consequences, that when tasting the fruit, there wasn't the consideration of being banished. Some of those archetypes are coming to mind for me.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I love the comments in the chat as well. You know, I mentioned earlier, one of our big ideas: to lead the system, you must see the system. And, you know, certainly there is an educational system, and it has been built and fortified over, you know, decades in this country and across the world. And so it has particular outcomes, intended or otherwise, that persist incredibly strongly. And so, you know, we like I said, you know, to lead the system, you must see the system is also the name of a chapter in one of Tony Bright's books that our leaders study as well. But we definitely expose them to more than just the so-called academic text, to really try to internalize these concepts, because at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for transformational change. We're not looking for just citations that they can use in future papers. We're not creating, you know, folks who can quote someone. We're creating folks who can make real change in real organizations. Let's take a look at another one of the big ideas. Leadership is an embodied practice. Sometimes I think that this one is the cornerstone of our practices, and also maybe in some ways the least clearly transferable into systems thinking. Although someone put in the chat earlier, it reminded them of successive approximation, and I think that's absolutely right. One of the things that we really prioritize in LEAD is experiential learning and utilizing both simulations and other body, mind, spirit modalities that help to integrate these concepts in order to, as I said earlier, really ensure that they can be accessible to leaders in the moments when they're most at need of systems thinking, which is when they're actually out in the field. And so a couple of different, this slide shows a couple different types of embodied practice that we utilize. On the right-hand side are some simulation activities. Simulation is a pedagogy that we use often. I gave you the example of interview day, where we give a case study of what would you do if you had to close an elementary school that was beloved by your community. Well, we don't just have them analyze that. On the second day of their interview, they actually come in and perform the role of a deputy superintendent and present for us what their first initial plan would be for such a school. We lead them through similar exercises throughout their time here, whether it's, you know, you have a speaker, you're a college associate vice chancellor, and there's a speaker who's highly controversial. How do you weigh the interests of free speech versus protecting the rights and dignity of students who are furthest at the margins? Or, you know, you have to present to a board and make a recommendation about how they spend a new grant that's come in. On the left-hand side of this slide, you'll see a different type of embodied practice. These are actually from a Theater of the Oppressed course that our students take. Theater of the Oppressed, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is a body-based pedagogy that follows in the tradition of pedagogy of the oppressed and comes out of Brazil, and actually asks folks to, through game, through simulation, through rehearsal, inhabit some real moments of conflict and challenge in an arts-based way in order to come to a deeper understanding of how they respond in those moments. And so, to seek understanding, we have to change perspective, we have to change our mental models, and we need to rehearse. And so these are some of the ways in which we do that in LEAD. And I want to invite you to join me in experiencing one of these. So in just a moment, I'm going to show you a short clip of one of our students' simulated activities. In this clip that we'll only watch about 3 minutes of it, you will see a group of 6 students interacting with 3 instructors. The instructors and the students are all in character, and you should be able to tell who's who. The instructors are acting out the role of an executive director of data and research, a board president, and legal counsel for a district. And the 6 students are the superintendent and cabinet of the same district who've just been given an impossible choice, the one I mentioned earlier, the need to close a school. And here they are, they don't know why, but the board president has called them in. They knew they were preparing for a closed board meeting, but little did they know, we interrupted their work time and told them, you have to report, the board president wants to see you. And they are starting to ask him some questions. It's a conversation, one that happens in many district offices, we'd like to think. And what we do is we put them through the simulation without giving them the anchor of the habits or other systems thinking tools. And then afterwards, we have them analyze their performance through that lens. And so as you watch the video, let's engage in a chat talk and put down in the chat any habits of a system thinker that you can hear the students using. And also feel free to comment on anything that they might want to consider further. So again, this is often a way that we rehearse and then we spend a lot of time reflecting on what went well and what we might do differently. And so we invite you to do that the same. We'll watch this 3-minute video. I will put on the captions. They're not perfect because they're just whatever YouTube was able to come up with, but hopefully that's helpful to some. And again, I invite you through this time, utilize the habits, and in the chat, put any of the habits that you hear students use or any that they might want to consider further.
The maintenance and operations department.
I'm just concerned because we have had parents come to public board meetings. And I am sure that board member Green is going to bring this up. And they've been complaining about the facilities at CARP. And we've had other local school districts get sued by their students for unsafe circumstances. Are we under some kind of legal jeopardy here?
We could have liability that if we don't approach it by notifying all of the powers that be and as well as the constituents in the community. And so the district superintendent should be working closely with legal counsel on that.
So may I seek some advice from you, President Lahiri? So what is your expectation, the board's expectation with regards to bringing forth public health data if we don't have access to that yet right now as staff?
I think that you acknowledge the importance of that public health data to the final decision-making process and give us a timeline for when you think that you would be able to have that data so that the board can be informed. Keep in mind, this is a closed meeting, so the parents and other stakeholders have not been notified yet, but I would go in that route. Underneath all of this, though, is clear equity issues. I'm wondering what your equity officer has to say about these considerations.
Sure. I just want to first begin by saying that anytime you close a school, it's heartbreaking for the community and families and very disruptive. And unfortunately not a new trend. So thankfully there's guidance from the state under new law. Rob Bonta just issued a memo last month. It's AB 1912 and it's codified in the Ed Code 41329 and requires that school boards develop a set of metrics before they close a school that is developed on equity impact analysis, and that we make those metrics publicly regularly available at scheduled meetings. And so thankfully there's some infrastructure or some guidance on things we should be considering. But from the human perspective, I would just say we're really concerned about our most marginalized students, and those are the ones on free and reduced lunch, our homeless students, our foster youth, students that are emerging bilinguals and from migrant families, from both school sites,
Students
right?
with disabilities.
Students with disabilities as well. So thankfully, the 9 metrics that he outlines in his memo addresses some key equity issues that will give the board some clear information and structure as they make this decision.
Okay. I love the connections that folks are making in the chat. Yes, to all of those. Someone put in the Padlet that we started with earlier, start with the things they're already doing. And I think that by having students code their existing interactions into systems thinking habits, we often find that they themselves can identify that they're doing many of these things. And it's a way of developing the language that can be really powerful for them. So yes, thank you to everyone who's sharing in the chat. Haven't been able to get to all of them yet, but I love these. Dawn, thank you for pointing out accumulations. I can tell you that even when you have 3 years with folks, I find that accumulation is still one of the hardest habits to teach. It's the one that takes them the longest to identify in themselves and really develop a mental model around. But I agree, there is quite a bit of that there. So after an activity like this, we often utilize another
The maintenance and operation.
where are we going? There we go. Is that still showing? What happened? Sorry. Technology challenges here.
The
No, we already saw it.
maintenance and operations department.
There we go. Often after we use an embodiment practice such as this one, we'll have students rewatch a video of themselves, and we might have them code it using the habit, or we'll often give them, after the case study, as I said earlier, a chance to look for archetypes. Sometimes we'll give them a very short simulation. So on this same day that they're engaging in this activity, we also had a moment where we have them go to, whatever it might be. You're going to the restroom, you're going to grab lunch, you're grabbing a phone call, and here opens the elevator and out comes the union president. And they say, hey, I'm really concerned. What are these rumors that I'm hearing? What can you tell me? And we record them doing just a 90-second or 2-minute live, ad hoc simulation. And then we have them watch it, and often invite them to use a tool such as the ladder of inference to identify how it is that they responded, think it over, and then have the opportunity to accept it again. So this idea that systems thinkers think slowly, we take the time to rehearse, and we don't always have that opportunity. We never have that opportunity in the high stakes world of system leadership, where any comment you made can end up, on the press, on the internet, can have impacts for your relationships with a variety of stakeholders. We try to purposefully create those opportunities for slow thinking, as well as, preparing them for the fast thinking that has to happen. Let's take a look at another example. Another one of our big ideas is the idea of you can't solve cross-sector problems with single sector solutions. And I know someone had mentioned that one really called out to them of all of the big ideas that we shared. One of the things that we do in that regard is we're really purposeful about introducing them to literature, academic literature that spans not just education, but other disciplines as well, whether that's social welfare, economics, political science, or in this case, sociology. And so we're going to play a quick game of bingo, because why wouldn't we? And so here's how we're going to do this. In just a moment, I will share with you an excerpt of this book, Poverty by America. It's a new book published by a Princeton sociologist, just out this year. The book is chock full of systems thinking. I don't think I've read a book in a long time that I could so easily just pick up the habits on every single page of. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to play bingo. We're going to give you a bingo card. You can open it up in that link, and we'll put it in the chat for you in a second as well. And see if you can find bingo. If you can find a full row, column, or diagonal of habits thinking. And if you have bingo, you'll put it in the chat and share with us how you got there. here's how we're going to do that. There are 12 bingo cards on the document that you'll open at this link up here. And thank you, Joan, for getting it into the chat as well. You should choose the one that corresponds with your last name, but don't worry, this is very low stakes bingo because the only prize is, you know, your honor and our collective claps. And so choose any card if that's confusing to you, or feel free to just listen and look for those connections as you have them. The excerpt is here as well. We'll put a link of that to the chat and I'll share it so that you can see it on the screen as well. Okay. If I could just get a couple of visual signals as folks are able to open their bingo, they know what bingo. Oh no, something has been blocked. VPN fire. That's okay. If you've been blocked, you can just play along with us by seeing how many you can get. And you can, if you have 5 in a row, you can yell out bingo. We'll do it that way. I will try to put a copy of the file in the chat if I can. We're missing M to Z. Oh, thank you, Cindy. So if your last name P, you are going to be on LMNO. Oh yeah, we are missing P. P and is, why don't you choose card number 9 if your last name is P, okay? If I could just get some thumbs up to let me know if you've found, yeah, you're ready to go. All right, let's introduce you to Poverty by America. Oh, no, I'll get the audio going first. Hopefully you've been able to open your own version.
There is a mustard yellow trifold brochure that I keep in my desk. It was published in 1953 by the state of Minnesota through the governor's Human Rights Commission. It's about racial integration. Black families' incomes had been rising, and some were seeking to buy homes in middle-class neighborhoods, including in white sections of town. Acknowledging this trend, the brochure, addressed to white families, asked and answered some basic questions about what black families wanted, which boiled down to the same things white families did. Equal opportunity, a good home. In response to a question about why segregation persists, the pamphlet says that many whites object to black neighbors because they are unsure of their own social position. There is a serious sociological insight here. When the ground feels unsteady underfoot, we tend to hunker down and protect our own, growing less willing to consider what we have and more apt to pay mind to what we could lose. Stacks of social psychological evidence confirm that when we feel resources are scarce, or could be, when we sense that our status, or that of our racial group, is slipping, we discard our commitments to equal opportunity. If you survey the American public, you learn that most of us want less poverty and less inequality, at least in principle. But when you ask us about specific policies to accomplish those ends, we begin to equivocate, especially if we feel those policies could cost our families somehow. The Minnesota brochure tries to temper this fear by asking white Americans to live up to their professed values. The white American who acts to bar a black family from his neighborhood is violating his own American creed, it reads, before ending on this note. To many white persons, these paragraphs may be disturbing. Candidly, the expression of these concepts in actual living will be difficult. Yet, American society improved only when citizens did the difficult thing. Poverty abolitionists do the difficult thing. They donate to worthy organizations, yes, but they must do more. If charity were enough, well, it would be enough, and this book would be irrelevant. Giving money away is a beautiful act, and yet poverty persists. Rather than throwing money over the wall, let's tear the wall down. The evidence is in, and it's clear. We can integrate our communities without depressing property values, compromising school quality, or harming affluent children. So why do so many of us remain unsure of our own social position? Why do we scare so easily? We have been taught this fear. Our institutions have socialized us to scarcity, creating artificial resource shortages and then normalizing them. For example, because the resident
Okay, we could have spent the whole hour just listening to that book. It's a really good book. Okay, I'm sorry this print is so small. Hopefully you've been able to open it up at normal size on your end, unlike me. If you think you have bingo, go ahead and put it in the chat, and let's give you all just a couple of moments and see what folks come up with. It's hard that there's no prize. The prize is you have to come up and explain to us your thinking. It's kind of a reverse prize, but I would love to see what folks have come up with. Ah, Dawn has our first bingo. All right, Dawn, I'm gonna stop sharing for a second, and we would love for you to tell us what 5 habits you were able to find in this excerpt.
Okay, one was a free space, actually. If you have to, assuming I can remember, so there were mental models about what Black families wanted, if I heard that correctly. Accumulations of neighbors who were like you or unlike you, consequences of actions, or in this case, inactions, or in terms of how you responded or how you acted on mostly on those mental models, I guess. And then testing assumptions, especially about the scarcity model, and that scarcity model really doesn't work the way people think it does. So.
Awesome, thank you. And I see one more bingo, kind of a bingo. Would you share with us as well?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is gonna work, but I got the circular nature of arguments and relationships. And then observes how elements with systems will change over time. I kind of blocked it out too because I was using a pen. I got little dots on them. I got seeks to understand the big picture and the change in perspective. I kind of had the diagonal bingo going from the bottom left to the top right.
Thank you so much. Anyone here, any other habits that maybe haven't been mentioned yet that you identified? Feel free to put them in the chat or come off of mute. We'd love to hear them. Oh, Mari is asking for more clarity about circular nature. More clarity and where we found it in the text, Mari, or more clarity about the habit?
Finding it in the text. Because I was pondering that one, but I was not, yeah, I want to hear.
Anyone have a response for Mari? Anyone find circular nature in the text?
Well, I think it's related to the assumption, because if you're assuming and you're making an argument, and based on that argument, you're making other assumptions. So that's where I saw the circular nature of thinking, where if your assumptions aren't based on facts, then your entire argument is incorrect. So that's kind of, I kind of use one to piggyback off the other.
Thank you. Yeah, there's definitely the idea, right? Ground feels unsteady. Our position is at risk. And so we follow into the scarcity model. And so and that continues, kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy here. Great. Yeah, Tracy's also saying she can see a loop. Awesome. Okay. You all are on your way to earning doctoral degrees at UC Berkeley. What can I tell you? This is how it happens. Okay, get this open again. So I told you at the beginning that we start off our application process for LEAD by introducing the systems thinking tools, the archetypes specifically. And that follows through all the way until students' dissertations. And so I pulled for you just a couple. We have 12 students in the first cohort, and I pulled for you just a couple of quotes from 2 of their dissertations that I think align with the 2 big ideas we haven't fully talked about yet. The first big idea, a leader is a steward of the public good. If I could have someone come off of mute and just read for us this short excerpt from Tyler, who is one of our students. This is from his dissertation proposal.
I'll give it a shot.
Thank you.
Okay. A leader is a steward of the public good. Since the inception of modern day schooling, students have been organised and sorted in order to make teaching and learning more efficient and targeted. These initial ideas of sorting students in order to create a stratified workforce have resulted in the ongoing tracking of students, leading to disproportionate outcomes along predictable lines of race and class. Yet, conceptions of intelligence and ability are socially constructed to maintain race and class hierarchies within schools and classrooms. This process begins when students are placed in low-track classes, where they respond poorly to lowered expectations and develop negative self-concepts, further reinforcing their teachers' negative beliefs, creating a vicious cycle of low expectations, correspondingly low performance, further diminished expectations, and so forth. Far from a linear process, these elements each influence the other over time.
Thank you, Esther. So we see circular, right? We see a loop again, vicious loop. Any other systems thinking attributes that folks can identify in Tyler's writing? Yep, structure drives behavior, success to the successful. Love it. All of the above. Elements influence each other over time, change over time. Great. Let's take a look at one more, if I can have one last reader volunteer. The second example is a higher ed example. Oh, this student is a college admissions professional, an associate vice chancellor here at this university. If I could have a volunteer, please.
You either design for equity or you perpetuate inequity. Stark tensions between the expectation to take high school courses that signal competitiveness and their accessibility for historically marginalized students create a systemic barrier that excludes Black and Latinx students from pursuing STEM majors. Despite the A, importance of course rigor in college admission decisions, B, widespread recognition of the need for greater high school course alignment with college admission requirements, and C, well understood stratification of higher education enrollment patterns, the high standards that selective colleges seek persists without adequate critique to understand who has an opportunity to meet those standards and who is being left behind regardless of their academic promise.
Thank you, Odie. What do y'all think? Some systems thinking in here? What are we finding? Put it in the chat. Feel free to come off mute. Any connections you can make. Accumulations, the rich get richer, success to the successful as well. Yep. Rules of the game. Yeah, again, structure generates the behavior is the most often quoted, unfortunately, systems thinking habit, I think, for our pre-K 20 professionals. Yes, definitely consequences, short-term, long-term, unintended consequences, great. Mental models, create the structures, absolutely. So again, this idea that from the moment they enter through the biggest summative assessment in their academic career as a dissertation, we're trying to find ways to really uplift systems thinking so that they leave here not just with those citations and the research chops and all of those traditional academic markers of a doctoral degree, but with a higher level of reflection and insight into their own career as leaders. So with that, I would love to invite you to go back to our beginning. We started with the Padlet. Let's open it back up. I'll turn the slides off in a second. Feel free to add to the Padlet as well. What additional ideas do you have? Connections can you make? I'd love for folks, certainly use the chat, but we'd also love to hear your voice and connections you can make to your own context and your own conceptions of how you develop leadership in various contexts. And certainly I would love to hear any feedback you have of what we might want to add or try. I'm already stealing some of the ideas I saw in the Padlet earlier as we continue to better our ability to create the leaders our systems deserve. So hop onto that Padlet and share with us. I see one hand already, Judy.
Yeah, I'm not in the educational land other than I'm a corporate trainer. So I'm drawing the connections to the corporate world and business and looking at a big challenge that we're facing currently in my organization or I'm considering, I don't know, it's a collective paying attention or not yet, but the concept of top talent and programs for top talents, identified top talents, and it feels very related to the work that you're doing and systems thinking. And I want to go shake up the world in that regard. It's in my nature. So exactly, John. I don't want it.
Now.
So this follows Judy perfectly. Yesterday, I was up in Flagstaff working with some teachers, and the best quote of the day was from a second grade teacher who said something like, so, I mean, what I'm thinking is something about like becoming a systems thinker means you have to become a disruptor. And I was like, yes. So I feel like that was a success. And this is meeting 8. So we're, meeting 8 in our cohort. So they're like a ways in and have started to really develop some good understanding of the habits and tools. And so I thought that was like a brilliant connection for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's, when Joan and I were thinking of titles for this session, one of the titles we were batting around is Preparing Leaders Who Are Ready to Transcend the Systems They're Leading, right? That idea of disruption, or, really, we're doing this work because in order to get different outcomes, we need different systems. Other ideas, and I love the ones in the chat, in the Padlet as well. I love, someone wrote in the Padlet, we are all part of the system, including its dysfunction, which I think is definitely something that, and some of those theater exercises that make our leaders really uncomfortable. They're like, I thought I was joining a doctoral program at UC Berkeley and you're, making me do improv. But it really is about finding a way to connect with the discomfort that comes with doing this work and recognizing our own complicity in upholding these systems. About 1 to 2 more comments. Improv School for Scientists. I'm gonna have to look that up.
I had one question about the title that you did choose. So developing leaders our systems deserve, when our systems don't deserve to exist or deserve to be disrupted, then we need leaders that are better than the systems.
Yeah, it's really the leaders our communities deserve, right?
Yeah.
Our systems
Yeah.
deserve. Thank you. That's a great stretch for us. Oh, Peter, thank you for the connection. Allison's sharing a resource with us. Wonderful, wonderful. Can't get enough of them. All right, well, we have just a couple moments here. Ooh, Alan Alda. It's like all of the things coming together, the medical model, the improv, my love of Cheers, not Cheers, MASH. Okay, thank you so much. Keep those connections coming. Please do connect with me if you'd like to collaborate further, if you have any questions, if there's anything I can send you, feel free to use the Habit bingo cards wherever they're useful. I keep some in my office just in case, you know, a day gets a little bit stale and we need to break something up. We'll put some links as well if you want to follow any of our work on social media. And with that, I think I'm gonna toss it back to you, Joan, to carry us home.
Lihi, you'll see all the thank yous coming in, and thank you again. And thank you to all of you for making this a great dynamic open studio. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Water Center, for creating this space for all of us. So appreciative.